So actually, in this episode, we are going to be discussing on a very burning question that is hitting the internet as of now. And the question is: Are video games a form of art? So actually, I was going through Twitter the other day, and I actually came across a tweet that was based on this very specific question, and there was like a I tell you like a war going in the comment section. Um, there were different the viewer base was separated, a lot of viewers was in support of this statement, like they consider like video games are indeed a form of art, but on the on the other side, like there were a lot of users who were in opposition of this very statement. So actually I'm going to be discussing my views and how I feel, do I consider like video games are a form of art or not. So yeah, according to me, absolutely, video games are a form of art, because not only the artistry involved in the worlds and the characters the video game developers create for us to explore, but the storytelling in the video games is some of the best of our modern era. Now, in order to prove my fact, I would like to give an example of a very great game, Red Dead Redemption 2. That was released in the year 2018, and which, according to me, I tell you, according to me, that is my opinion, is the greatest game of all time. I know, like a lot of listeners who will be listening to this podcast, hopefully in the future. I know, some of them are going to disagree with me on the fact that Red Dead Redemption 2 is the greatest game of all time, but that's my opinion, and I actually respect each and everyone's opinion on which games like they consider uh, the greatest game of all time. And actually, I tell you, I'm gonna be like honest with you. Like before playing this game, I consider GTA 5 Grand Grand Theft Auto 5 the greatest game of all time. But when I it was like it was like a year ago when I installed this game, and when I actually completed this game, my mind, it completely changed. Yeah, and my views changed from GTA 5 to Red Dead Redemption 2 being the greatest game of all time. So yeah, actually, the stories within Redemption 2 not only play on almost all of the traditional Western tropes and themes, but the primary story itself is impactful and so moving that I'm not gonna lie, I'm not capping on anything like that. When I first got to the ending of the Arthur Morgan storyline, I actually cried. Yeah, and that's not cap. That is a very true statement. I actually cried when I got to the ending of the Arthur Morgan storyline. And for those of you who do not know who Arthur Morgan is, that is actually the protagonist of this very game, of this very series, Red Dead Redemption 2. And I can tell you that, I can bet on the fact that, yeah, and this again is also my opinion. Now that Arthur Morgan is the greatest protagonist in the entire gaming history. Period. Now, coming to another great game, another great series, Dead Space series. The overall story arc of the Dead Space series remains some of the best sci-fi horror that I have ever experienced. Now, coming to another great series, another great game, The Last of Us, and The Last of Us Part 2. Like, in that very game, the themes of love, loss, revenge, and remorse that they explored in The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2 are so incredible that I almost feel like they could be the equivalent of, within double quotes, required reading for modern students to explore these themes. Now, actually, I'm gonna present some facts in front of you guys to prove my fact. In 2011, in the year 2011, a very popular film critic, Roger Ebert, famously revisited his earlier stance, acknowledging that video games could be a form of art. Now, around the same time, major institutions like the Museum of Modern Art in New York and the Smithsonian American Art Museum started including video games in their collections, further legitimizing their status as art. Now, these developments indicate a shifting perception of what constitutes art, influenced partly by the increasing complexity and nuance in video game design. So that was my views on whether video games can be considered a form of art or not. This was my views, and actually I presented. Actually, I was speaking in support of it because I do consider that video games are indeed a form of art. And in order to prove my fact, I gave examples of very great games. Like they have gained massive numbers. They have did exceptional, like Red Dead Redemption 2, the Dead Space series, The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, and that was my views. But I would like to add a point, in conclusion, that it is worth noting that not all video games may be considered high art, just as not all paintings or films are considered masterpieces. Like there is a wide spectrum of games ranging from simple entertainment to deeply immersive artistic experiences. So yeah, uh, uh, like I do consider video games are a form of art, but at the same time, I do consider, like do know, and it is very obvious, to not only me, but to all, to all the listeners listening to this podcast. Yeah, like there are some video games which I gave examples of, like the Red Dead Redemption 2 and all that. They are like great, but at the same time, like there are some games, I would not like to point out, uh, which are those games, but there are some games out there, that may not be considered high art, or that cannot be like categorized as high art. It's it goes in the same way, like all paintings or films cannot be considered masterpieces. Yeah, that's all for this episode. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in. And this is your host, Tanmay Singh, signing off.